Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Planning Plus Software. My name's Gavin. I'm the Managing Director and the founder of Planning Plus Software. And what have we got in store for you today? Well, recently I interviewed Clive Burnage. Now, Clive's from Mainline Auto Body in Santa Maria in California. And we spoke to Clive about the evolution, development and introduction of their core values wheel and their respect model, and how both of these have combined to become the backbone of the culture that Mainline's created and the way they live and breathe from these values every day. What we're going to do is break that down into 3 episodes for you. So in episode number 1, we'll explore their three-legged software stool and how important that is to their business. And then we'll look into their three-legged cultural stool. And to close out episode number 1, we're going to take a deep dive into the Mainline library. And let's check out what books have become a cool part of their continuous learning process at Mainline. So it's a pretty cool interview over the 3 sessions. Each one runs for around about 15 or 20 minutes. So sit back, enjoy, grab yourself a beer or a coffee or water, whatever takes your fancy. And we'd love to hear some of your feedback. And I'll see you at the introduction to episode number 2. Bye for now.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Planning Plus Software. Well, today I've got a gentleman from Mainline Auto Body in California, Mr. Clive Burnage, joining us, and we're going to talk about their respect and their values set and the evolution of these things and how they came about. It's always something that I truly love to work with. I love to look at the certain things like what drives people and what sets themselves up for living a purposeful life and how to share that purposeful life with others so we can affect each other in a most positive way. That's what we want to try and do. And how important is it to have a respect and values model within your own workplace? So Clive, welcome to Planning Plus.
Thank you for having me, Gavin. Pleasure to be here, as always.
Yeah, Clive and I have formed a relationship there when Clive came and joined Mainline Auto Body through Mr. Joe Hinkins, our mutual friend. And Clive works extremely closely with Joe. Joe is a huge visionary and he has some great visions and then he passes those on to the team, and he employs people like Clive to say, hey, I've got all this stuff in my head. Can you help me get it out there? And that's where
That's exactly it. That's it in a nutshell, Gavin. That's our working relationship. Yep.
And then Clive goes, okay, what do we got this time? And off he goes. So the wheels become in motion. It's a really powerful team, and they've built an extremely powerful team over there at Mainline. So Clive, I'm going to share with everyone just some screens that you were kindly enough shared with us for the purpose of today's interview. And we'll work through each one of these displays, and I'll just ask you a few questions around it, and we'll just break this down so people can get a feel for what it is you actually have over there. And then we can talk about what you have and what it brings to the business and what it does for your people. So I'll just bring that up now and then we'll roll through. Can you tell us a little bit about your three-legged software stool and how that structure evolved?
Yeah. So this is obviously where we came in, Gavin. This is how we developed our relationship in the first place. You'll see there in circle 1 is CCC1. That's obviously an industry staple. We are mandated to use that by insurance companies. It's a pretty good platform. So we're tied to that, like it or not. But that's a big part of who we are and how we have to roll. And then we introduced Planning Plus probably 5 or 6 years ago now, Gavin, off the back of the SEMA show. So as you've alluded to, Joe Hinkins is always looking for things to make life easier, things to make life lean. And he saw obviously the potential with Planning Plus with all its visual aids and bright colors to really add some sense to the madness that can be the production floor, a busy production floor. And then tying it all together is Process Street. And that's, if we say the Planning Plus is king on the production floor, then Process Street is king in the admin world. And we use that piece of software. It's not industry specific. It's literally a scratch build from a blank template that just walks us through every single step of a traditional repair, whether it's how do you greet a guest, how do you complete the check-in sheet, how do you write the blueprint to be compliant with the DRP partners, and on and on and on, all the way through to ordering parts, correct dispatch process and procedure, final QC, job closing, reselling the job, and the accounting all at the end of it. So that holds everyone's hand throughout the process of administering repairs. So CCC1 is what it is. Planning Plus, king on the production floor, Process Street, king in the admin world. The three communicate in part, but largely they are three independent pieces of software that keep this place standing upright.
Yeah, that's well explained, and I like the way you do that, because CCC, as you know, yes, mandated by work providers and insurers that's their standard. You can't escape that. You also have other software like Mitchell and Outertex and different platforms that may be required to be used as well. And then implementing Planning Plus, well, that's been a joy for me and my business and working with Mainline. And then Process Street, and we know we've spoke a lot about Process Street in the past and the challenges you had implementing that. And they were true challenges, and they really pulled on a commitment, didn't they, to that was not introducing Process Street and building all of the processes and the videos that go with it and the way the whole street, well, it went from a street, didn't it, to basically a suburb.
Well, actually, it did. It actually, the correct phrase, it went from a sheet. It went from a piece of paper that had 20, I believe it was called the 20 list here. It was before my time, but 20 admin steps that we have to do. Check in the car and fill in the green sheet, fill in the blue sheet, fill in, on and on and on. But there was 20 things, and we thought, man, this is the modern world. Can we digitize it? And that led us down the Process Street avenue. So there's a contradiction in there, but anyway, so we landed upon that, but it soon became apparent that more than just a checklist, it could be an amazing training tool, because not only do we have what needs to get done, right alongside it, we can have all the training materials to show you how to do what needs to get done. So it became more than we originally took on, but it was a project, as with all things, nothing comes easy. I think Joe was famous for saying, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And I always have to tip my hat to how Joe somehow finds the stamina and the drive to see these projects through, and not just to have it be a 5-minute wonder, but to see it through to the end and put it into action. And yes, so that's where we're at with our software, and we can't live without either one of them, truth be told.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And from the Process Street side, what are the benefits that you found once that you got that established? What benefits did that bring to the organization?
Well, the benefits were clearly repetition, standardization. Everyone knows how to do it, whether you've done it 1,000 times, whether you've done it for the first time. It'll walk you through it. It'll hold your hand, literally. Obviously, there are some things which you need some industry insight into. But so the standardization is one element. Two, you've got the consistency in the training. There's nothing more consistent than watching Joe present a video on how we do a certain process. And he doesn't have to repeat that 400 times. He's done the video once, and then the video does the rest of the work. So that really lightens the workload when it comes to training people. And then the third element was, as these job checklists, individual job checklists unfold, you have a function called the inbox. So it's basically, it serves up on a plate who's up next, who's on base, who needs to take care of what and when. So while it was initially a checklist, developed into a training tool, but then it became much more than that. It actually drives actions day to day. And we now have obviously several departments here across Mainline who look to their inbox to go, okay, what's on my plate today? What have I got to get knocked down, and what have I got to hand off to the next guy? So it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And it was a lot of time, many months there and many months of fine-tuning stuff. But once it got rolled out and the team came on board, well, it's now part of everyday culture and everyday life at Mainline. So we've got CCC1, Planning Plus, and Process Street. So thank you for that explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, you've got a three-legged cultural stool. And I can see in that three-legged cultural stool, you've got core values, respect model, process and procedure. How did the terminology, the three-legged cultural stool, come about? And could you share with us those three legs of the cultural stool?
Sure. Okay, so the three-legged cultural stool, how did that come about? I mean, that's a Joeism, the three-legged stool, you know. Then again, the concept is that stool won't stand up if one of them's missing. It'll just fall over. And core values, that's a lot of companies have core values. A lot of companies say this is what represents us: honesty, integrity, that sort of thing. They put them up on big letters on the wall, and that's where they stay. And do they really drive any behaviors? So we made sure when we created our core values that they were really meaningful. And alongside that is the respect model. And I'll explain the roots of that as we go through and maybe review the Mainline library, as it were, in a moment. And then finally, process and procedure, the standardization, making sure we're dotting all the T's and crossing all the I's and doing it the same every time. The more we follow process and procedure, the more chances we have of success. The more we deviate, and it doesn't go so well. So that's the three elements. And for those who remember Venn diagrams at school, you'll see that intersection right in the middle that's highlighted pink. When you get all of those things working in tandem, the core values, the respect model, and process and procedure, that's when you get the real magic.
That's when everything falls into that middle. It's basically shaped like a heart, isn't it?
Yeah, could be.
You could look at it that way. So once we get that happening, we've got a lot of love going around in the place. So.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Let's move on, and I want to talk about the Mainline library. Now, the Mainline library is something that is huge in the world of Joe Hinkins. And I'll just flick over to the library. Just confirm with me you can see that okay there, Clive.
Yeah, got it.
And let's talk about the Mainline library and the effect that the Mainline library has on the world of Mainline Auto Body and the people within the business.
Yeah. So, you know, one of our favorite phrases around here is that every day's a school day. You know, we always maintain that open-mindedness, that we can always learn something. And, you know, Joe is the first to say he's a lifelong student. The first to say people may think he's got it figured out, but there's always something else. And these 10 books that we're looking at there on screen are pretty much the staple of the Mainline library. These are what has got us to where we are today. There's obviously been a lot more that have come and gone that don't really hold any real lasting value. And we've never been ones to sign up to the latest and greatest fad, as it were. But this really sort of has helped us shape who we are. Not because we had it all figured out, but because we were always open-minded enough to learn and look and see how we could then integrate. So you'll see some classics in there. Obviously, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. The Game of Work. I think Joe referred to that in your blog post that I read this morning, actually, Gavin, about the power of measurement.
Yes, exactly.
The Toyota Way. Again, that was Toyota turning the world on its head in the world of automotive manufacture. 2-second lean is kind of bite-sized chunks from the Toyota Way, the principles of lean, just broken down into any way that you can save 2 seconds in anything you're doing, that'll pay you back. John Maxwell, that's a big book there, 5 Levels of Leadership. Predictable Success by Les McKeown. Lean Office Demystified, easy for me to say. That's a spin-off from sort of 2 Second Lean, but in the admin office kind of world. Extreme Ownership from Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, former Navy SEALs. That's a great book. That's a great book. And so is the follow-up to that, The Dichotomy of Leadership. In the second book, Jocko freely admits that people took extreme ownership to the extreme and realized that you don't have to go all the way. There is always balance. There is always balance. So the second book is a really good sort of foil to that as well. Who? That is all about trying to find and hire the right people out of the gate. We've learned some really good tips there on the right kind of questions to ask. And when we follow that model, it's worked well. And Traction and Get a Grip, that's all based around the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. And that has really, really changed the mainline world. Prior to those books, it was, with all due respect, the world according to Joe, because Joe was the guy who set the vision. He was the guy who put things into action. He was the guy that followed through. He was the guy that kept score. He was the guy that did everything, essentially. And down the years, many times in our transatlantic friendship that we had before I came here full time, Joe would often share with me that it gets tiring. When you're the guy who has to do everything, it gets tiring. And he would often say, man, if it's not me leading the charge, if it's not me building the systems, if it's not me compiling the SOPs, then it's nobody. So along came the entrepreneurial operating system in the form of that book, Traction. And it gave us the framework in which we could really share the load and speak a common language, and not only at leadership level, but across the whole company. So we're 2.5 years into that process now, and it's no longer the world according to Joe. It's the world according to everyone at Mainline. And that's bringing Joe some relief. It's winning him back some of his own time, because everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction. So that's really formed who we are today, and has fed into our core values, which we're going to come on to. And then finally, carrots and sticks don't work. That's, as it says on the cover, building a culture of employee engagement within the principles of respect. And again, that's the concept that dangling a carrot isn't necessarily a great incentive, and hitting people with sticks on the other end of the extreme, that's not a good way to get things done. You got to win the hearts and minds of people to really get them to buy into what you're doing, so that they can help carry the load too. So those are the 12 books, as it is, that have really stuck and are meaningful and shape our day-to-day here at Mainline.
Thanks for that. That's a great explanation. And we can read books, and we can take the books on however we want to take them. We can listen to them on audio. We can read them in our of an evening, of a weekend, whatever. And the most powerful thing that you can do from that part is to actually take action to do something about it. And what I would like to share with everyone is that Joe took the Toyota way, and he invested a huge amount of money to employ the resources that implemented the Toyota way, which was an external company. And he did that, took that project on, and it ran for 12 months. And he put everyone in the business through the Toyota way. I've spoke about this before. He put everyone right through to the janitor and the maintenance man through the Toyota way. So everyone was then buying into it. So it's not just, you've got to take action on these things. Now, the Toyota way basically then built the framework and the platform that then allowed the business to move forward once again, because it's an evolution. As you say, we're always learning. So do you go through and spend, all right, I'm going to spend $100,000 and put my whole team through the Toyota way over the next 12 months. And then do we stop? So what happens from there is you've got to have momentum. You've got to keep things going. You've got to keep inventing yourself and building on that framework. And that's what creates the helps contribute and create the culture and also the values. Now, the lead on from that was you spoke about traction and get a grip. Well, they're part of the entrepreneurial operating system, which once again is bring in an external company, help us to evolve this whole entrepreneurial operating system, and that then sets up new frameworks. And so they're not, it's like you can spend $100,000 and go and put a spray booth in and paint cars. And I talk about this in my book that's just about to be released called Know Your Numbers, the Heartbeat of Your Business. But there's different chapters in there around culture, incentivization, and is incentivization greater than, team culture? What has to go in is, so they need to work together. Incentivization and culture need to be as one. And that whole, what you've spoken there about the EOS system, and you're continuing on that EOS path. So it's take the books, but also turn it into action.
Oh, that's the key point, Gavin. I mean, I mentioned earlier that some books come across our path and you go, nah, that's just a rehash on something that's already been done. And you have other things that you go, nah, it's just not for us. Doesn't make them bad books, just don't resonate with how we are. But the key point is it takes leadership to bring these things to the table. It takes leadership to see them through. It takes leadership to my end point, I think, is it's constant work. The work's never done. Just because you've read a book and you've discussed it, the work's never done. It needs constant attention and nurturing. There's no one simple solution. It is, if you take on any of these projects, the Toyota way, for example, that's never done. That's a lifelong project in and of itself. So yeah, you're right. It's you got to learn a theory, but then you got to apply it, and not just apply it once. It's day after day after day, and it takes stamina. And as again, I tip my hat to Joe. He's been that guy who said, "This is where we're going, and we're going to stick to it." And that's a huge element.